I remember closing that door with some attitude, honey. I put some firmness on the way I closed that door. I've ignored red flags, smelled the smoke, and still walked right into the fire. If you've done the same, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Have you ever found yourself asking, why does this always happen to me? If you have, this episode is for you. So for example, you could go to a different school and there's that person again, the one who always gives you the backhanded compliment. There he is, that guy that used to bully you. You could go to a different church and Sister Sarah, there she is. Sister Sarah with that hat and that shady look there she goes. Different relationships. You left Jack and now you with Sam, and Sam reminds you a lot of Jack. Interesting. Somehow you keep ending up in the exact same place. The names change, the scenery changes, but the story stays the same. For years, I felt like life just wasn't fair. No matter what I did, I just had to struggle. I had no idea that I was living from a script. A script isn't something that you consciously choose. It's a belief about yourself that quietly becomes the lens through which you interpret life. What I learned about scripts are that they develop in childhood. And I talked about this some before. When you're growing up, there's different circumstances that happen that you end up developing these beliefs about yourself and you don't even realize it. And it comes from repeated experiences. It really does feel like this is just how things go. These things just keep happening to me, only to me. This explains why people experience the same event differently. You could go through the same thing with someone and they have a totally different story or what they remembered. This explains it, this script that's going on in the background that changes your reality. Everyone has a script, and your script affects your reactions before your mind can even catch up with what's going on. My script didn't become obvious until when I got dumped. Getting dumped didn't create my script, but getting dumped did expose the script. This was the first time I had a major rejection that really hurt me. My confidence was shook to the core. Before this happened, I'd already sold all that Cutco. I'd been up on stage getting awards. I'd done well with learning Spanish. Like there were different things that I was successful at. I was standing out from the crowd, things where I would put effort into it that I was able to succeed. I felt confident about myself. I felt confident about my abilities. But when I was broken up with, my confidence was really shaken to the core. I started to question myself in a way that I had never questioned myself before. I began interpreting future relationships differently. I became so afraid of experiencing that pain again. I was in so much pain. I would go to sleep, and when I would wake up in the morning, the first thing that would come to mind is, oh, you have a broken heart. There's a song by John Mayer where he talks about when you're dreaming with a broken heart, the waking up is the hardest part. I was living that. I just could not get over it. I was terrified of experiencing that kind of pain again. I was making decisions from fear, but I thought I was making decisions logically. I wasn't even aware of how this fear of experiencing this level of pain was controlling my life. That's when my scripts started showing up everywhere. And here's what people misunderstand about scripts. I wasn't a weak person. Yeah, I was facing some challenges when it came to relationships, but I wasn't weak and I definitely wasn't passive. And I was absolutely not afraid to speak up, whether I was at work or with friendships or with family. I absolutely confronted people if I had a problem. I voiced my concerns. That's a nice way of saying it. I would argue back. When I healed, I realized I was a doormat in certain areas, but you couldn't have told me that at the time. I would stay longer than I should. Deep down, I normalized being dismissed. I felt like my opinion mattered intellectually, but deep down emotionally, my opinions didn't matter enough for me to leave. I could feel upset about something, I could not agree with something, but it wasn't enough to inspire me to say, I'm out of here. I wouldn't leave, I would stick it out. I realized after I healed that the script was always playing. It was after the breakup that it became loud and clear that something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. In one of my relationships, I had a birthday. My boyfriend at the time told me that he would take me out to dinner. This was a long time ago. I can't remember all the details, but I remember enough. You know, what's that saying? You don't remember every single thing, but you remember how you felt. What I recall is he told me that he would take me out to dinner and he had to work that day. I don't remember if he was running late or what had happened, but I remember I was waiting for him. He came to pick me up and took me to a restaurant. And I remember thinking, what time does the restaurant close? It's getting late. And this is before smartphones. You couldn't just pull out your phone and know, oh, the restaurant closes at this time. And looking back, I was immature. Why didn't I call the restaurant to see what time they were closing? But anyway, we got to the restaurant late. And I think it was probably about 9 o'clock. And he went to open the door and the door was locked. They were closed. Now, right there, I remember feeling really disappointed and also feeling like, why didn't he plan? I thought I was supposed to be, keyword, important to you. Why didn't you plan for this? I remember that he apologized and he was embarrassed. He took me to another restaurant. The only place that we could find was some type of sports bar. And all the girls were dressed like we went to Hooters. I remember that. They were wearing these skimpy little outfits. It was very, very awkward. He felt awkward. I felt awkward. I don't think they had the best food is what I remember. It was bad. And it was really embarrassing on his part. And I didn't say anything, but I do remember feeling emotions brewing up. We got back to my dorm. I don't remember everything that was said. I think he did ask me if I was upset, and I would say, oh, no, I'm not. I do remember that I tried to smooth it over. I wouldn't come right out and say that I was disappointed in how I really felt. When I got out of the car, I remember closing that door with some attitude, honey. I put some firmness on the way I closed that door. It wasn't fully a slam, but it was heading there. He called me, is what I recall. He was saying, oh, you're not happy. I know you're not happy. And I was like, and I'm just trying to smooth it over. I was not being authentic. I was not being fully honest. When I look back, I absolutely felt unimportant to him. And my feelings were hurt. I never liked admitting to being hurt at that time. I still don't. As a 42-year-old woman, I don't like admitting that I'm hurt. But I was hurt by it. I didn't feel important enough to express how I felt. I was not able to put that into words at the time, but I'm able to put that into words now. My script was playing. I didn't feel it was important enough to express how I really was feeling. Instead, I tried to smooth things over and I became resentful and those feelings just bubbled up. And that's when I ended up semi-slamming the door. But he also reacted. I don't know what his script was. My assumption is that he didn't feel like he was enough. He didn't come out and say, listen, I messed up. I am so sorry. Next time I'll get it right. That I remember. That didn't happen. Instead, his script was going, my script was going, and we were doing what I call a do-si-do, honey. Just going round and round doing the tango of scripts. The unconscious scripts took over. We weren't actually having a disagreement or an awkward conversation about what happened. It's more so, I don't feel important, you don't feel like you're enough. Once I learned what my script was, I finally knew what I needed to change. Susan helped me to identify it. I realized why I would argue with Susan when she said I didn't feel important, because, well, I argued. I did stand up for myself, but I wasn't fully authentic. I didn't truly get in touch with this script that was running in the background. So Susan had to really push to get it through to me. Rebecca, you do feel unimportant. You absolutely do. And then I would start to realize, wait, I did feel offended about a particular circumstance, but I didn't feel like, wait, I am important. If I felt like I was important, I would have come right out and said how I really felt about it. Or I would have identified what was important to me before situations even occurred. I wouldn't have felt like I needed to defend my feelings. I would have just said, nope, I'm important and this is what I want. Not in a bratty way, but in a direct, authentic way. I would have been more honest with myself and with other people. Once I identified that I didn't feel important, I was able to pay attention to all these scenarios that would happen in my life, and I was able to replace I'm not important with I am important. Because if you don't identify what's actually going on, you can't fix it. Whenever the feelings of, there it goes again, I'm being treated like I'm not important would come up, I would replace it with I am important. I became emboldened by that, but emboldened in a good way. She taught me to look back to what I felt like, what I looked like, what I thought when I was 6 years old. And I do remember my childhood very keenly. So I was really able to picture myself as a 6-year-old. When I was little, everybody called me Becky. I looked back at little Becky. It was really emotional to see myself as this 6-year-old, and she taught me to view myself as the mother of that 6-year-old. And it's crazy how when you're struggling with these issues, you have a hard time standing up for yourself or feeling that it's okay to express how you really feel. But when you think about the 6-year-old version, all of a sudden, this mommy comes out. Nope, you're not going to talk to her like that. You're not going to treat her like that. Not on my watch. So she taught me to become the new mommy of the 6-year-old. And I did become that new mommy. You are not going to play on her time anymore. As you really fully start to heal, the new mommy becomes enmeshed with the 6-year-old. So now the two become one. And that's really when you're living in that healing. And it doesn't happen right away. It happens over time. So now when I go through situations that are disappointing or unwanted, the 6-year-old comes up of, ooh, I'm disappointed. Ooh, I don't like that. That's not for me. I don't like the way that I feel. That comes up, but also comes up the new mommy. Not on her watch, not today, honey. It's not happening. Once I discovered the script, I finally knew what I was fighting. And I became that new mommy. It was on. It was on. There was a new woman in town. I learned discernment. Remember how I said that discernment is already there. God puts it in us. It's that we had to wake up and to become confident about how we feel. I learned that everybody has a script. That right there changed my life. First, it changed my life that I now know my script, that I feel unimportant and I have to replace it with that I feel important. But then when I realized that everybody has a script, it changes because it's a lot more difficult to offend you. When you're standing in line and somebody's getting impatient, when your significant other says something you don't like or responds or reacts a certain way, you realize, oh, that's just their script. Coworkers, script. They don't feel important. They don't feel enough. This is not personal. It's something to do with their script that is not healed. I feel very strongly the only way out is through. Once a person works through these things, the triggers to do with their script, they're not as inflamed. They'll respond versus react. I've already worked through this. I'm living in healing. So now when the script that I'm not important gets touched on, I'm able to respond versus react. So I realized that I would cry as a reaction. And I'm sure there's people that can relate to that, where you're a strong person, you're a bold person, you have a lot of confidence, but once you get that bad review at work or your significant other says something that triggers that script, tears start coming down. And it's embarrassing. Once I realized that when my script really got activated, I would cry, that made so much sense to me. So now when something will trigger the feelings of not feeling important, I replace it with, wait, I am important. I'm able to remain a lot calmer. I'll go, that's interesting. I found I don't start crying. I'll feel some emotions come up, but the tears, they're not coming down. I'm able to fight it. I'm able to retain my dignity. And so when people react around you, you're able to not go with them. You're able to respond versus react because now your trigger is not so raw It's not inflamed and laid bare, waiting for an opportunity to explode. It's been dealt with. So now when it gets triggered, you can respond versus react. I began asking, what story am I believing? That brought me so much peace. What brought me even more peace was to ask, what story is the other person believing? And recognizing that they're having a reaction based on their script, that it's not personal. It's never personal. There's something going on within that person, and also something going on within you. If you get a hold of your script, you absolutely will change your life. So in closing, you can't heal a script that you don't even know that you're living. If today's episode encouraged you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.